The Fyodorovsky Cathedral of the Russian town of Tsarskoye Selo is a particularly sacred place for Emperor Nicholas II. The emperor set out from here on May 15, 1913, on the day in memory of Crown Prince Dmitry of Uglich, on an Easter pilgrimage to ancient Russian cities. The royal family first visited Vladimir, once the capital of the Grand Duchy, which served as the foundation for constructing Russian statehood. After accepting a report from an officer, the emperor entered into conversation with the lower ranks. The same custom took place in other cities that the royal pilgrims visited. After the ceremonial march of the Grenadier Siberian Regiment, which was stationed in Vladimir, the ladies of the city had the pleasure of presenting Her Majesty and the Grand Duchesses with bouquets of flowers. Representatives of different estates, departments, societies, and institutions were honored to present bread and salt, congratulatory addresses, gifts, and icons to the emperor. From the station, the emperor proceeded to the 12th century Cathedral of the Dormition, which was once the cathedral church of the primate of the Russian Orthodox Church, the Metropolitan of Kiev and all Russia. The emperor also inspected the 12th century Cathedral of St. Demetrius, which is decorated with unique ancient Slavic and Byzantine symbolic images. After a Thanksgiving service in the Cathedral of the Dormition, the royal family traveled to Suzdal, the first capital of the Vladimir lands. Grand Duchess Olga wrote in her diary, "On the way, all the peasants of the nearest villages met Papa with crosses and banners, and there was a table set with bread, salt, and icons in front of each hut. The crown bearers prayed in the Nativity of the Theotokos Cathedral, and then, accompanied by an archaeologist, were acquainted with the monuments of antiquity. At the entrance to the cathedral, the emperor accepted a delegation. The sovereign wrote on that day, 'With delight and interest I examined the wonderful treasures preserved in the sacristies and the Russian architecture of the ancient churches. On the right we see a mica Tsar lantern made for cross processions in the 17th century. The emperor examines the Tsar lantern. Next, the royal family visited the convent of the Deposition of the Robe, where they venerated the relics of Saint Euphrosyne of Suzdal. The emperor then prayed in the Savior Monastery of Saint Euthemius. The Tsar leaves the 16th century Transfiguration Monastery Cathedral. We examine the sacristy, which is remarkable for its antiquity and beauty, wrote Grand Duchess Olga in her diary. A service for the departed was performed in the memorial chapel at the burial place of the hero of the Russian land, Prince Dmitry Pozharsky. The procession exits the chapel. The intercession of the Theotokos convent. Here the emperor visited the ancient crypt and prayed at the tomb of Grand Duchess Solomonia Saburova, who was Saint Sophia in monasticism. At the completion of the day, there were prayers in the Bogolubsky Monastery, where the emperor venerated the relics of the right-believing Prince Andrew and the miraculous icon painted at the request of the prince, the Bogolubskaya Theotokos. The next point of the pilgrimage was the capital of the ancient Nizhny Novgorod Suzdal Duchy. The crown-bearers arrive at the Cathedral of the Transfiguration, erected in the 17th century at the expense of Tsar Mikhail Fyodorovich Romanov in gratitude for Moscow's support during the time of troubles. In the cathedral, a Litya service was prayed at the tomb of the local government headman Kuzma Minin, who organized a people's militia to liberate Russia from foreigners. From the cathedral, the procession set out for Blagoveshchenskaya Annunciation Square to establish a monument to Minin and Pozharsky. In the center of the procession is the Aranskaya Vladimirskaya icon of the Theotokos, which is a shrine of the Nizhny Novgorod lands and is contemporary to Tsar Mikhail Fyodorovich. The prototype of the icon was the wonder-working Vladimirskaya icon of the Theotokos from the Cathedral of the Dormition in the Moscow Kremlin. In the background is the Cathedral of the Annunciation and its bell tower. On the left, next to the bell tower, is a wooden outline of the future monument to Minin and Pozharsky and its planned size. The lower ranks stand in prayer. On the right is Bishop Joachim of Nizhny Novgorod, who was later canonized. A small model of the monument. The royal family laid the first stones. After the consecration of the beginning of construction, the Yekaterinburg and Tobolsk infantry regiments, which were stationed in Nizhny Novgorod, marched in front of the emperor in a ceremonial march. In the background is the church of St. Alexis, Metropolitan of Moscow. Now you will hear the voice of the Tsar. In the park at the governor's palace, the Tsar received representatives of the peasant class, local government officials. Saying goodbye, the sovereign said, "I am sure that following the example of your glorious ancestors, you will always be on guard for the faith, the Tsar, and the motherland," and accepted the icon. Ipatiev Monastery is the cradle of the Romanov dynasty. This is the footage taken February 21, 1913, the 300th anniversary of the election of Boyar Mikhail Fyodorovich Romanov to the throne. The chambers where the mother of the future Tsar, the Kostroma nun Martha, with the young Mikhail Fyodorovich lived during the time of troubles. On Sunday, May 19th, the imperial family approaches the center of Kostroma. All the way from Nizhny Novgorod, thousands of peasants from all the surrounding villages gathered on the shore to see the steamboat and bless the royal family. The banks of the Volga were literally flooded with people. The clergy blessed the path of their majesties with a cross. In his diary, the sovereign wrote, "People came to the bank of the river from all the villages, arches were built everywhere, and many ran along with the steamboat." The royal flotilla passes through the center of Kostroma. In the background is the five-domed Cathedral of the Dormition. To the right of it is the Cathedral of the Theophany with its bell tower. It should be noted that the royal family traveled to Kostroma on the ordinary state steamer Mezhin for business trips, which had been in use for almost 30 years by that time. Ipatiev Monastery. Representatives of all classes met with the emperor at the green gate of the monastery with a cross and icons that the Moscow delegation of 1613 brought to Kostroma when they offered the crown to Mikhail Fyodorovich. And also with the icon with which the nun Martha blessed her son for the throne. The emperor then proceeded to Holy Trinity Cathedral. When the royal flotilla approached Kostroma, a procession with the Fyodorovskaya icon of the Theotokos came out of the cathedral. The procession approached Ipatiev Monastery just at the time when the royal family arrived there. The emperor went out through Catherine's Gate and venerated the icon, which was then brought into the cathedral. Next, a liturgy and a Moleben to the Fyodorovskaya icon of the Theotokos were held with the proclamation of many years to the royal house. The imperial family, grand dukes, clergy, retinue, attendants, and different ranks come out of Holy Trinity Cathedral. Grand Duchess Elizabeth Fyodorovna is on the upper steps. Next to the Tsar is Bishop Tikhon Vasilievsky of Kostroma. Many people had the good fortune to see the royal family that day. The mood was very joyful. After the divine service, the crown bearers visited the chamber of Tsar Mikhail Fyodorovich, where the richest ancient repository of the Church and Historical Society of Kostroma was located. The Tsar attentively examined the shrines for a long time, illustrated gospel manuscripts, ecclesiastical and other utensils of the reign of the first representatives of the Romanov dynasty. The imperial family leaves the chambers of Tsar Mikhail Fyodorovich. After praying in the Ipatiev monastery, the emperor arrived at the central pier of Kostroma accompanied by a jubilant crowd. On the arch, built in the style of the Russian gates of the 17th century, is the following inscription: "Blessed is the one who comes for many years." Monument to the peasant Ivan Susanin. Through Susanin Square, the royal family goes to the Romanov Historical, Archaeological, and Ethnographic Museum. On the way, the motorcade was greeted by students of women's schools, gymnasiums, and pupils of orphanages. Upon the arrival of the Tsar, the solemn opening of the museum took place. The crown bearers examined the halls of prehistoric antiquities, on ethnography, the history of the Kostroma region, a large collection of donated engraved portraits, and a numismatic collection. The royal family leaves the Romanov Museum and returns to the Mezhin steamer. The next morning, the crown bearers arrived for prayer at the Cathedral of the Dormition, where the main shrine of Kostroma, the Fyodorovskaya icon of the Theotokos, which appeared in the 13th century, was kept. With a huge gathering of people, the solemn procession went from the cathedral to the place of establishing a monument in honor of the tercentenary of the imperial house of Romanov. It was decided to erect a memorial obelisk in Kostroma, the place from which the Zimsky Sobor elected the Romanovs to the throne. There was a small consecration of water. The crown bearers and the Grand Dukes laid consecrated bricks, a foundation plate, and silver jubilee rubles in honor of the 300th anniversary of the House of Romanov into the base of the monument in a cross-shaped pattern. A traditional ceremonial march of His Majesty's own convoy. The royal family leaves the square and goes to the governor's garden. In the background is the Church of the All-Merciful Savior in the Gostiny Dvor. In the garden, the Tsar accepted various delegations, including from Muslims. After an offering of bread and salt from the local officials, the sovereign said, "I am sure that the love and devotion of the Kostroma population will never run out as long as the Russian land is alive. I drink to your health." Next, the Tsar inspected the Church of the Resurrection, while the Tsarina deigned to pray and eat Pascha cheese in the Theophany convent. The Emperor ended the day with the opening of the handicraft and industrial exhibition, which he left after dark unguarded and surrounded by the people. An eyewitness wrote, "A boundless explosion of enthusiasm gripped all those who saw the Tsar up close." Shortly after his departure, the Emperor telegraphed Kostroma, "I heartily thank everyone who prayed for me and my family." View of the Dimitrov Juridical Lyceum and the Dormition Cathedral. The steamboats of the flotilla that accompanied the crown-bearer pilgrims. the Yekaterina, and the Strezhin. In the distance, on the shore, the people of Yaroslavl eagerly await the emperor. The steamer Mezhin at the pier. On board is the royal family. Yaroslavl is a citadel of artistic creativity of Russia of the 17th century. It is a city famous for its wonderful temples. First of all, the crown bearers went to the Dormition Cathedral, where they venerated the relics of the holy Yaroslavl princes Vasily and Konstantin Vsevolodovich. The emperor next inspected the Church of the Savior and the Church of St. John the Baptist in Tolchkov, which is a monument of amazing harmony of external architecture, internal space, and frescoes. The royal family leaves the temple. "A very interesting church," wrote Grand Duchess Olga in her diary, and the emperor said about the Yaroslavl churches, "Each one is better and more beautiful than the previous," and ordered to paint the Fyodorovsky Cathedral of Tsarskoye Selo based upon the frescoes of the church in Tolchkov. Then the crown bearers visited the Monastery of the Savior, founded in the 13th century. The motorcade arrives at the monastery. Here the royal family venerated the relics of the holy princes Fyodor and his children David and Konstantin, and visited the chambers of Tsar Mikhail Fyodorovich, where he stayed on the way from Kostroma to Moscow in 1613. The Theotokos of the Sign monastery icon dated back to the 13th century, and the image of the Savior made of wax. In the background, in the center, is the church of the holy princes Fyodor, David, and Konstantin. On the left is the Church of the Resurrection. The royal family leaves the monastery. Further, the emperor thoroughly examined the Church of St. Elijah with unique wall paintings consisting of almost 1,000 frescoes in order to continue their restoration. The Tsar observes a parade, and in the background we see a railway bridge across the Volga. It was opened on February 21st, 1913, on the day of the 300th anniversary of the House of Romanov, and the bridge was consecrated by the future Patriarch of Moscow and all Russia, Tikhon. The bridge was named after Emperor Nicholas II. Note that this is the only Yaroslavl railway bridge across the Volga to this day. The day ended with the visit of the royal family to Tolga Monastery. Having carefully examined the church antiquities, the crown bearers venerated the 14th century Yaroslavl shrine, the Tolga icon of the Theotokos. Two years before the emperor's visit, the Rostov Kremlin seems a bit like a fairy tale. It should be noted that the Kremlin was fully erected under the first Romanovs, and the Patriarch Filaret, the father of the first Tsar of the dynasty, served as Metropolitan of Rostov until his transfer to the Moscow Cathedra. After the solemn meeting of Emperor Nicholas II, Bishop Joseph Petrovich of Rostov, who was later canonized, noted, "Rostov apparently touched the deeply impressionable soul of our most pious emperor." And the Tsar's sister, Grand Duchess Ksenia, at the end of the royal pilgrimage, wrote in her diary, "The imperial couple liked Yaroslavl and Rostov very much." The royal family arrived in the city for the leave-taking of Easter on the eve of the feast day of Saint Leonti of Rostov. Upon arrival, the emperor venerated the tombs of the Rostov miracle workers. After this, the crown bearers listened to the ringing of the great Rostov bells. The largest of them weighs 32 tons. You hear the ringing that the Tsar was listening to. Through the gate under the Church of the Resurrection of Christ, the Tsar entered the Kremlin and inspected all the inner churches. The Church of the Smolensk icon of the Theotokos and St. John Theologian. With great interest, the Tsar visited the museum in the White Chamber, which included thousands of items of church antiquity and ancient Russian life. The Tsar then proceeded to the Church of the Savior na Senyach, whose frescoes later served as a model for the frescoes of Fyodorovsky Sovereign Cathedral in Tsarskoye Selo. At the end, the emperor examined the prince's chambers. The imperial family is accompanied by the future Patriarch Tikhon. The Tsar reverently admired Rostov. An eyewitness wrote on that day, "We saw and felt the Tsar with our heart and soul. The Tsar loves the people, and repay him, O Lord, for this love." The Monastery of the Savior and St. Jacob, 2 years before the arrival of the Tsar. It is astonishing that the royal passion bearers and future new martyrs Bishops Tikhon of Yaroslavl and Joseph of Rostov, who soon played a leading role in protecting the Church from the Soviet power, met shortly before the Russian tragedy in the church-rich city of Rostov, the first ancient city of Central Russia. Rostov is the city of crosses, an old proverb says. The royal motorcade arrives at the monastery. The mutual kissing of hands of Bishop Joseph and members of the royal family, sprinkling with holy water. In the background is the Church of the Conception of the Most Holy Theotokos. After the prayer service with the reading of the Gospel, the Emperor venerated the relics of St. Demetrius of Rostov and examined the antiquities stored in the monastery. The royal family then visited the wooden church of St. John the Theologian on the Ishnia River with an amazing carved iconostasis. And then they returned to the Kremlin, ending their day with prayer at the vigil on the eve of the Ascension of the Lord in the wonderfully painted Church of the Resurrection. On the Feast of the Ascension, the Emperor spoke graciously for an hour before the liturgy with representatives of the peasant class, who had the good fortune to see the beloved monarch up close. In the city of Petrovsk, in the Cathedral of Saints Peter and Paul, the royal family listened to the liturgy. The crown bearers leave the cathedral for Pereslavl-Zalesky. In the background, you can see that many residents are running after the cars. In Pereslavl, on the eve of the feast of St. Nikita the Stylite, the Tsar prayed in the monastery of St. Nikita and examined the antiquities. A shroud embroidered by Tsarina Anastasia Romanovna. The imperial family next visited Holy Trinity Church in Danilov Monastery with its amazing 17th century frescoes and the Fyodorovsky Convent, founded in honor of the birth of Tsarina Anastasia Romanovna's son Fyodor. At the exit from the city, the Tsar prayed in Holy Trinity Church in Troitskaya Sloboda, and he arrived in Sergev Posad the next day. From the gate of Holy Trinity St. Sergius Lavra, the procession proceeded to Holy Trinity Cathedral. It should be noted that before visiting the capital, the royal family prayed in several temples dedicated to the Most Holy Trinity. The three hypostases of God in one essence is the main dogma of Christianity, which reveals the mystery of God's existence. Towards the end of the pilgrimage, the Tsar focused on prayer in churches dedicated to the Trinity. The altar cross of Holy Trinity Cathedral is being carried. In Holy Trinity St. Sergius Lavra, which is a place of particular concentration of Russian spiritual experience, as in ancient Rostov, the royal family was accompanied by two archpastors who soon entered the host of new martyrs, Bishop Fyodor Pozdievsky and Metropolitan Vladimir Bogoyevlensky. The royal family venerated the relics of a luminary of the Russian lands, St. Sergius of Radonezh. The abbot of the Lavra, Archimandrite Tobias. After the liturgy, the emperor accepted bread and salt from various delegations. The emperor, with Metropolitan Vladimir Bogoyevlensky, soon to be the first of the bishops to accept the crown of martyrdom. From the monastery of St. Sergius, the crown-bearing family, together with the future new martyr Grand Duchess Elizabeth Fyodorovna, went to the first capital city. From the Alexandrovsky railway station, the Tsar went to the Kremlin on horseback. Through the Triumphal Arch, the procession slowly moved along Bolshaya Tverskaya Street with bells ringing in all of Moscow's churches. The influx of people was unprecedented. Along the path of the procession, the clergy blessed their majesties with a cross. A thunderous hurrah was heard from all sides, and it mixed with the sounds of the marches of the regiments that met the emperor. The joy of unity was universal, reaching rapture and delight, inspiring and purifying the soul. Eyewitnesses testified that the generous Russian cordiality, the joy of seeing the adored monarch, and the splendor of his procession could only be compared with the celebrations of the unforgettable days of the Tsar's coronation. This is confirmed by the Tsar's entry in his personal diary. The meeting of the people on the streets resembled the processions to the coronation. And the Tsar's sister Ksenia noted in her diary, "It was beautiful, there were a lot of people, and everything, thank God, went well." The main goal of the royal pilgrimage, which was to imbue the soul with the piety of ancient times and to replenish in himself the image of Holy Russia, was achieved by the Tsar. The fate of Russia is closely connected with the fate of the Tsars. More precisely, the fate of the Tsar is the fate of Russia. The sovereign understood this well and tried to save the country, replenishing his own spirituality. Ahead of the brilliant motorcade is 100 of His Majesty's own convoy. Then follow the Emperor and the Grand Dukes. The Tsarina and the Crown Prince. The 1st Hussar Sumy Regiment. In the center background, a priest censes. After traveling through the cities and towns of the ancestral Russian lands, Emperor Nicholas II completed his journey among the jubilant people at the Iverskaya Chapel. The crown bearers were sprinkled with holy water by Bishop Trifon Turkestanov. The family venerated the Athonite shrine, the Iveran icon of the Theotokos. At the Spassky Gate of the Kremlin, the emperor venerated the Fyodorovskaya icon and a large icon of the great patriot and martyr for the Russian land, Saint Hermogenes, canonized shortly before the arrival of the emperor. The emperor on foot and the other family members in carriages proceeded to the Kremlin. The Archangel Cathedral, the tombs of ancestors, where a litia was served. The Tsar wrote in his diary, "I lit a lamp that had been put in place by the whole family over the tomb of Mikhail Fyodorovich." On the next day, May 25th, a ceremonial exit from the red staircase of the Palace of Facets to the Dormition Cathedral took place. It was the birthday of Empress Alexandra Fyodorovna. The Dormition Cathedral is the main Russian temple, the memory of coronation celebrations. The concentration of great common Christian and Russian shrines, a piece of the Lord's robe, a nail of the Holy Cross, the Vladimirskaya icon of the Theotokos, the reliquary with the relics of Saint Hermogenes built at the emperor's initiative. The great procession then proceeded to Chudov Monastery, founded in the 14th century, which was the oldest in Moscow. Proto-presbyter Nikolai Lyubimov of the Dormition Cathedral is in front. With a cross is the metropolitan and missionary Makary Nevsky, who was later canonized. In Chudov Monastery, they visited the most interesting, as the emperor noted, exhibition of personal spiritual items of his royal progenitors. The Tsar leaves Chudov Monastery and goes to Znamensky Monastery on Varvarka Street, which was founded by Tsar Mikhail Fyodorovich. The procession in Znamensky Monastery. The monastery housed the most ancient family shrine of the Romanov boyars, the Theotokos of the sign icon before which the ancestors of the royal dynasty prayed. Next, the emperor examined the ancient Romanov chambers where the future sovereign Mikhail Fyodorovich was born. On the left we see his cradle. The royal family leaves the chambers. The next Sunday, the crown-bearing family prayed in Novospassky Monastery, where the ancestral tomb of the Romanov boyars had long been located. Everyone is waiting for the Tsar. The Tsar has arrived. Metropolitan Makary Nevsky of Moscow performed the service. The crown prince was sick and arrived only at the end of the service. After the liturgy, the Tsar went down to the crypt of the Romanov boyars and bowed before the remains of his ancestors and prayed at the Liturgia. During the inspection of the monastery, the emperor was accompanied by the abbot of the monastery, archimandrite and missionary Makary Gnevushev, who later suffered at the hands of the atheist authorities and was canonized among the new martyrs. The psalm readers of the monastery had the good fortune to present to the emperor a model of Holy Transfiguration Cathedral that they made by hand, and to hear the gracious gratitude of His Majesty. Above the monastery gates, the words of the prophet Samuel are inscribed, "See ye him whom the Lord hath chosen, that there is none like him among all the people." And all the people shouted and said, "Long live the King." The royal family next visited the Martha and Mary Convent, which was founded by Grand Duchess Elizabeth Fyodorovna. The next day, the crown bearers completed their great pilgrimage in the Kremlin Ascension Convent, where the crypt of Tsarina Anastasia Romanovna and her mother, the Skimenon Anastasia, was located. On the road, they venerated the relics of the sainted princess Yefrosini of Polotsk. The Tsar departed. Farewell prayers were served in all churches in Moscow. Immediately upon arrival, the royal family listened to a Thanksgiving Moleben in the Cave Church in honor of St. Seraphim of Sarov in the Fyodorovsky Cathedral. Only after praying did he go to the palace, where the sovereign wrote in his diary, "We entered our house with a pleasant feeling of fulfilled duty, according to the mercy of God."